For a decade, Denise lived surrounded by silence and the memories of her missing daughter. When, on an ordinary morning, she spots a pair of roller skates at a yard sale, her world collapses. They are her daughter's skates. The encounter with that object brings old wounds to the surface, awakens dormant suspicions and uncovers truths that everyone around her would prefer to keep buried. In a neighborhood that has chosen to forget, Denise refuses to. But the answer she has sought for so long may be more devastating than she ever imagined. Hello, my friends. I am Linda, and this is the Linda's Stories channel. I hope you enjoy this story. Denise shivered when the doorbell rang that Sunday morning. The sound echoed through the empty house, a house that had once been full of voices, mostly shouting. She opened the door slowly, finding Eleanor, her neighbor for years, holding a colourful poster. We are organising a community yard sale next weekend. I thought maybe you'd like to participate, you know? Clean out the closets, sell things you no longer use. Denise forced a smile. It was rare for the neighbours to invite her to anything. Since Isabel had disappeared 10 years ago, people avoided bringing it up, avoided touching on it. I'll think about it, Elena. Thank you. When she closed the door, her gaze wandered down the hallway leading to the locked room, Isabel's room, untouched for a decade. Denise would never sell anything from there. Every object was a hope frozen in time, a proof that her daughter had existed and would return. On the kitchen calendar, Denise marked each day since the disappearance, 10 years and 73 days. No matter what the letter said, that hurriedly scribbled teenage handwriting, I need to leave. I can't take it anymore. Denise knew, or had convinced herself, that her 14-year-old daughter would never have left on her own. Someone had taken her. It had to be that. While preparing a strong coffee, Denise observed her trembling hands. It had been 3 years since her last lapse, since the last time the need overpowered the promise to stay sober. The weekly meetings helped, although she rarely shared. How could she explain that her greatest addiction was not substances, but her absent daughter? The coffee spilled as memories flooded her mind. Isabel at 5, running around the house in slippery socks. Isabel at 8, crying after Denise broke the promise to take her to the park, unconscious on the couch. Isabel at 12, screaming that she hated her, while Denise, in a rare moment of lucidity, wept with apologies that never seemed enough. Isabel at 14, leaving only a crumpled letter on the bed. The phone rang, bringing Denise back to the present. It was Victor, her older brother, with whom she had barely spoken since he first tried to convince her to get into rehab. I'm just checking on how you are, Dee. I'm fine. Taking my meds. Going to meetings. The silence on the other end said it all. Victor didn't believe her. No one did. Have you thought about doing some activity? Maybe working part-time or a hobby? I have a hobby, Victor. It's called looking for my daughter. The call ended, as always, with sighs from both sides and empty promises to talk more. On Saturday morning, the neighborhood was transformed. Makeshift tables occupied the lawns. Families organized used items. Children ran between the adults. Denise hadn't planned to go out, but something pulled her outside. Perhaps the need to see people. Perhaps the small hope she always carried. What if someone knew something about Isabel? He walked among the tables, politely declining offers of antique vases and yellowed books. In the Petersons' backyard, her neighbours 2 houses down, a table full of old toys caught his attention. Stuffed animals, board games, dolls with faded clothes. That's when she saw them. A pair of pink skates with bright blue wheels, identical to the ones Isabel used to wear. The world around her froze. The lively chatter, the children's laughter, everything was replaced by the sound of her own heart, beating violently against her ribs. Those skates. She would recognize them anywhere. She had spent hours searching for that specific model for Isabel's 13th birthday. The girl wore them every day, even in the week she disappeared. How much for the skates? Her voice came out strange, distant. Sarah Peterson smiled kindly. $15. My daughter barely used them, actually. Denise felt the world collapse. The words slipped out before she could hold them back. "These skates belong to my daughter, to Isabel." Sarah's smile disappeared. "No, Denise. They belong to Lily. She got them when she was 14. "No, I bought them for Isabel. Look, there's even a scratch here." Denise grabbed the skates, turning them frantically. She fell on the sidewalk and scratched them right here. People began to gather, drawn by the increasingly loud cries. Sarah tried to retrieve the skates, but Denise clutched them to her chest. "You know where my daughter is. Why do you have her skates? What did you do with Isabel?" The crowd fell silent. Sarah's husband appeared, trying to calm the situation. "Denise, please. These are Lily's skates, remember? Isabel and Lily were friends. They bought identical skates." "Liar! You're all lying!" Denise began to cry, her body trembling. 10 years! 10 years searching for my girl, and you knew—" Someone called the police. Eleanor tried to hug her, but Denise pushed away violently. The skates still clenched tightly against her chest. She shouted accusations at everyone around. Sarah Peterson disappeared into the house and returned minutes later with a photo album. "Look, Denise," she said, opening the album to a specific page. "Here, Isabel and Lily at Lily's 14th birthday, both with identical skates." The photo showed two smiling teenagers sitting side by side on an outdoor staircase, proudly displaying pink skates with bright blue wheels. Isabel, with her brown hair tied in a messy ponytail, had a smile that Denise barely recognized, free, carefree. The police siren shattered the silence that had settled. 2 officers approached cautiously. "Mrs. Morales, can we talk for a minute?" Denise looked at the photo, at the skates in her arms, at the faces around her, some with pity, others with fear. The reality hit her like a physical blow. In 10 years, she had never considered that Isabel might have truly chosen to leave, that her daughter might have preferred anywhere else over staying under the same roof as her. She returned the skates to Sarah with trembling hands and allowed herself to be led away by the officers. The following days were a blur. Her brother Victor appeared at the police station, taking responsibility for her. He took her home, where Denise curled up in bed, unable to process the public humiliation and the brutal revelation. "She really ran away, didn't she?" she whispered when Victor brought a tea she wouldn't drink. "Isabel ran away because I was a monster." Victor sat on the edge of the bed. His hair was already completely grey, and the lines on his face were deeper than she remembered. "Dee, you were sick. You still are in a way, but you're not a monster." "You weren't there, Victor. On the worst days. When She couldn't finish. How to describe the memory lapses, the moments she woke up to a wrecked house and Isabel huddled in some corner? "You're right," he replied softly. "I wasn't there when I should have been. None of us were." That night, for the first time in 10 years, Denise opened Isabel's room. She sat on the untouched bed, stroking the dusty blanket. On the nightstand, the last book her daughter had been reading still marked the page. On the desk, school notebooks and coloured pens awaited a student who would never return. In a box under the bed, Denise found a diary. She hesitated before opening it, feeling it would be the last invasion of privacy she would commit against her daughter. The first pages were typical of a preteen: crushes, frustration with classes, plans for the future. As she progressed, the tone changed. "Mum broke all the dishes today. I had to lie at school about the bruise on my arm. I wish she would stop drinking, stop yelling, stop hating me." The last entry was from 2 days before the disappearance. "Lily told me about her cousin who moved to another city. She said I can stay with them for a while. I'm scared, but staying here is worse. I love Mum, but she won't get better. Maybe when I leave she'll realise she needs help." Denise closed the diary, tears silently streaming down her face. Isabel had not been kidnapped. She was not dead. She had simply chosen to live. 3 days later, Denise called her brother Victor. "I need help," she stated simply. At the rehabilitation clinic, Denise finally confronted her demons. Not just alcoholism and substance abuse, but the depression that had accompanied her since adolescence, the trauma of her absent father, the obsession she had developed with Isabel. When she left 6 months later, she was another person. She tidied up her house, which previously looked more like an abandoned home, and got a job at a local supermarket. She started attending a support group for parents of missing children, although her story was different from most. There, she learned to live with the absence, to nurture hope without letting it turn into an obsession. Her relationship with Victor and the rest of the family improved. Gradually, the neighbors stopped looking at her like a bomb about to explode. Sarah Peterson even invited her for coffee one afternoon. Lily and Isabel exchanged emails for a while, Sarah confessed. But then they stopped. Lily tried to track her down when she went to college, but the old addresses no longer worked. Denise nodded, grateful for the honesty but without resentment. I understand. Isabel had to protect herself. She loved you, Denise, even in the worst moments. Lily always said that. 6 years had passed since the roller skate incident. Denise now worked full-time at the city library, had a small circle of friends, and a cat named Pages that greeted her every night. Her days had routine, purpose. It wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was a life she had built, piece by piece. The doorbell rang on a Sunday afternoon while she was organising books for donation, something she did regularly as a way to practice letting go. When she opened the door, time stopped. In front of her stood a 30-year-old woman with the same brown hair she knew so well, the same green eyes that looked at her with a mix of fear and determination. But there were new lines around those eyes, a confident posture that hadn't existed before. Isabel, Denise whispered, her legs trembling. Hi, Mum. The voice was deeper, more mature, but unmistakably her daughter's. They stood still for a long moment, 16 years of absence weighing between them. Then, without knowing who took the first step, they were in each other's arms, silently crying. Inside the simple but tidy house, Isabel observed her mother's new life with curious eyes. You are okay. It wasn't a question, but a relieved statement. I'm better, Denise replied honestly. Day by day. They sat at the small kitchen table, 2 women who shared genes and scars but were practically strangers. Isabel spoke first, sharing fragments of her journey, how she stayed with Lily's cousin's family for 2 years, then moved west, working temporary jobs, eventually earning a scholarship to study nursing. I got married 3 years ago, she said, showing a simple ring. We have a 2-year-old daughter, Charlotte. Denise absorbed every word, every new detail about the life Isabel had built away from her. She didn't ask why her daughter had never gotten in touch. She knew the answer. Why now? She finally asked. Why come back after so long? Isabel took a newspaper clipping out of her bag. It was a small article about a fundraising event for the local rehabilitation clinic. In the photo, Denise was smiling shyly, holding a symbolic check. The headline read, Former patient gives back. I am here today thanks to them. Sarah found me on Facebook, Isabel explained. She sent this 6 months ago. She said you were different. Denise nodded, silent tears streaming down. It took me a long time to muster the courage, Isabel continued. I was so afraid of coming back and finding the same situation. I understand, Denise replied without resentment. I failed you in every possible way, Isabel. I don't expect your forgiveness. Isabel reached across the table, hesitantly touching her mother's hand. I didn't come to forgive or punish, Mother. I came because I think we deserve a chance to truly get to know each other. When Isabel left that night, she promised to return the following week. Maybe she would bring photos of Charlotte. Maybe one day she would bring Charlotte herself. Denise stood at the door, watching her daughter leave, not fleeing anymore, but simply following her path with the promise to return. The lost years would not come back. The old wounds would need time and care to heal completely. But there, on that quiet afternoon, a new beginning had sprouted from an old ending. If you enjoyed the story, please leave a comment with a rating from 1 to 5 to show how much you liked it. Also, watch the video that is now appearing on your screen. See you soon.